However ancient and desolate the primal landscape of Norway seems, one of the building blocks of the modern world can be found here, in the Norwegian port of Bergen. Long before what we now call the 18th century's Industrial Revolution, trade by sea was changing northern Europe in the 12th, 13th, 14th centuries. The trading traditions and rules that built the mercantile wealth of 17th century Holland and 18th century England began earlier, with a network of northern European seaports. This was the Hanseatic League, a kind of multinational alliance of trading guilds. Its members were usually merchants speaking a form of Low German in towns as far apart as Antwerp, Hamburg, London, Novgorod, and the Bergen waterfront. This is where we find the world's best preserved relic of the Hanse era, an intact waterfront of old wooden stores and houses called the Bryggen. The Hanseatic League set standards, weights, measures and coinage, long before most nation-states standardized measures. They ran their own law courts to settle trading disputes. They laid the foundations of the modern world of banks, shipping lines, stock exchanges, and commodity trading. This remaining strip of relatively unchanged 17th and 18th century wooden houses lets us glimpse how the modern business world slowly took root 500 years ago. It was in the Hanse towns that people again began to say, "City air makes you free." Open exchange of goods, open discussion, the chance to meet men who had visited distant lands. These ports started Northern Europe's expansion around the world, hot on the heels of Portuguese and Spanish mariners. Bryggen's plain yet cheerful blend of utilitarian building and practical tradition still charms and inspires. In ports like this, trading men breathed free. In 1306, a contour of the Hanseatic League was established in Bergen. The word contour was originally French and means counting table. This is what the Hanseatic cities called their 4 largest foreign autonomous colonies, governed by elected superiors or aldermen. Warehouses and places where the actual selling happened were also called contours, along with the organizations that protected the interest of merchants. Bergen became an important trading center, and the wharfs developed further. Besides German merchants, the buildings of Bergen housed almost 2,000 German clerks. Clerks and traders came from the German middle class and took a vow of celibacy. They returned home after a certain amount of time spent in office. The Hanseatic district, occupying the harbour next to the castle, was separated by a fence from the rest of the city. Typically for merchant houses, the ground floors were shops, mainly storing dried cod from Norway and grain from the south. Upper floors were apartments. There was a fire in 1702, but most of the damaged wooden houses were rebuilt then. One is now the museum. From the 16th century, Hanseatic influence in Europe weakened, however. England, Denmark, and especially Holland started to dominate maritime trade. The first German store in Bryggen shifted to Norwegian traders in 1630. And by 1740, only 9 stores remained in German hands. Many German merchants became Bergen citizens. In 1669, after the last formal Hanseatic meeting, where only 6 cities represented themselves, the League broke up. In 1754, the German contour was replaced by a Norwegian clearinghouse, but most of the rules remained the same, and German was still spoken in the workplace. Finally, in 1899, the last Norwegian clearinghouse in Bergen closed, bringing to an end a trading tradition almost 1,000 years old. Today, there are 61 protected buildings in Bergen. A few Hanseatic warehouses are still intact elsewhere in Europe, but the Bryggen has the only surviving Hanseatic clearinghouse. Nothing like this remains in the bigger Hanse towns. The architecture of tiny fjord villages or the wooden warehouses of Bergen's historic port seem conservative, plainly practical, huddling together stoically against the cold and the wind.